Look inside the box and see what we get. We get the flex connectors. We get the weight, and that's for the pull-out part of the faucet. I'll show you how to install that later. We get the beautiful heavy-duty faucet itself with all the connections. I'm going to be replacing this name brand faucet with this new stainless steel faucet. All right, let's get started and remove the old faucet. First, shut off the angle stops underneath. If you're unsure where the angle stops or shutoffs are, follow the flex connector from the top of the faucet down to where it connects in like this. You're going to want to do that with the hot and the cold side. Be sure to open up the faucet hot and cold side to check if, in fact, the faucet is shut off. This also helps relieve any excess water that's inside the faucet so it doesn't drip on you when you disconnect it below. Next, let's start removing this faucet. And remember, every kitchen faucet is going to be different. The first step that I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this plastic little part here, which is just a snap-in connection. Next, let's remove the weight from the hose. Let's remove the snap-off connection by unscrewing it from a hose. Grab a bucket because you may get water. Next, let's remove the weight. Now, you can come back up to the top of the faucet and remove the hose. All right, let's hop under the sink again, and I've got myself 2 open-ended adjustable wrenches. I'm putting 1 open-ended adjustable wrench on the flex connector and 1 to back up the faucet, so I can disconnect the flex connectors from the faucet. This particular faucet has a secondary brass fitting, which is pretty uncommon actually. It's held in by a little cotter pin here on the top, and I'll show you in here how to get that off simply by pulling it out like this. Once the cotter pin is off, simply pull the brass fitting off, and there you have it. All right, now I'm going to do the same for the other side. All right, let's get that flex connector off, and we'll remove the second brass bushing once again by slipping the cotter pin off and pulling on the brass fitting. Here I've got myself a funny looking wrench. This is called a basin wrench. If you don't have that, a crescent wrench will work just fine. Not as easy, but it'll work. To use a basin wrench is pretty simple. You will simply put the basin wrench on the nut here, and the basin wrench flips 2 different directions. Make sure you have it in the direction to remove the nut. Slide it up flush against that nut and start turning it. However, as I said earlier, we can do this with an open-ended adjustable wrench as well. Once I've got that loose enough with the open-ended adjustable wrench, we can start manually turning it with our hand. Be sure to back the faucet up on the bottom here with your second hand, because as that nut becomes loose, the faucet can definitely drop into your sink and possibly break something. If you have 2 people, of course, this job is easier. All right, let's hop back up on top here, and now we can remove the whole faucet. I like to grab some cleaning product. I've got Ajax here, sometimes Common or anything, and just kind of give this area a nice little cleaning when the faucet's off, because it's your one and only chance before the new faucet comes in to do so. All right, next step, grab your open-ended adjustable wrench and remove both flex connectors from the angle stop sides. We're going to do this because our faucet comes with flex connectors, and I'll show you later how to install those. Now we can get started installing our faucet. This faucet is a single hole faucet. It's only made for one of these holes up on top here. However, it can be installed in any application. So there's going to be 2 different ways to install faucets, either a single hole like our faucet today or a 3 hole. As you can see on top, I've got 2 other things, a push button garbage disposal and a pure water faucet on the top of mine. So I need a single hole faucet. However, you can install this faucet if you have a 3 hole sink in a 3 hole application by simply getting a plate, a very inexpensive plate for a few dollars that'll cover these 3 holes, and you set the faucet right on top of that. Here is a sink hole cover that is super easy to install. The way it's installed is simply unscrew the nut from the threads here and push the plate down and screw it from underneath the sink into the brass threads. All right, let's get this faucet installed. As you can see, it's very heavy duty. The first thing that I like to do is remove these items right here. First is the nut that locks in, and as you can see, that nut has 2 screws on it. We'll go over that a little bit later. Let's put that off to the side. Next is our flat metal washer. We'll put that down to be installed later. And finally is our black rubber gasket. There also is a secondary waterproof gasket on the top here, which is nice, so you don't even have to install plumber's putty or silicone. All right, next, let's grab our flex connectors. As you can see, there's 2 little black O-rings right here, so there is no Teflon tape or paste that is needed. I like to do this step outside before I've installed the faucet, even though I think the manufacturers designed this faucet to be installed while you're underneath the kitchen sink, but everything when you're laying on your back is a little more difficult, so I like to do it before the faucet's installed. Grab an open-ended adjustable wrench and cinch that down pretty tight, but don't go overboard. Next, I'll do the same for the other side. Because I'm having a little difficulty screwing the second flex connector into the rigid pipe, I've just grabbed myself a little screwdriver to wedge a little more room in here. This is the most difficult part of the whole installation. Just a little tight, but I'm willing to forgive that because the faucet is so fairly priced and it's very heavy duty. Alright, I grabbed my open-ended adjustable wrench and I tightened the second flex connector after I wedged it with the screwdriver, and now we are good to go. Alright, the next step is to set the faucet in the hole. This faucet is great because it can be installed in several different directions. I like it here because I'm right-handed, but if you need room because there's tile or something close in the back, it can be installed without a problem in the front like that. Sometimes the tile hits or granite hits that handle, so the water is not allowed to be turned on completely. It also can be installed on the left-hand side right there. For left-handers, that might be a nice thing, but here's where I like it. Next step is to make sure this faucet doesn't fall. Balance it in the hole. If you've got someone to help you, great, much easier, but it definitely can be done alone. Alright, the next step here is I'm gonna unscrew this little plastic thing because the nut does not fit because I've got those flex connectors on first. This is a way that I found is just easier. Be careful not to lose the black rubber gasket inside. I don't know if you can clearly see it there. There is a black rubber gasket inside there and it will fall out. Once the plastic hose connection is removed, what we're going to do, well, it's underneath, but I'm going to show you on top here, is put that nut on just like that. So it kind of slides in between the flex connectors, a little bit of like a puzzle, but pretty easy to do once you figure it out. Okay, from underneath, first let's grab the black rubber gasket, slide it all the way up. Next, grab the flat metal washer, slide that all the way up, making sure neither of these fall down on you. And finally, we're going to grab the metal locking nut, and we're going to put that in just like I showed you above. Then, you're going to tighten that as much as you can, only with your hands. After that's secure, you're going to take your Phillips head screwdriver and you're going to tighten these nuts equally. You're going to start on one side, you're going to screw these two screws in equally at the same time. You're going to start screwing one and then go back to the other and back to the other. Before those two screws are completely tight, what I like to do is come up on top here and make sure that the faucet is where you like it. It's completely square and it looks good from up top. We don't have a big angle in any direction. Then we'll go back under and do our final cinching down of those two screws. Next, let's take that plastic hose connector that we disconnected with the black O-ring and reconnect that. Okay, that simply goes into that hole right there with, of course, the black rubber gasket first, and we can get that thing hand tighten only in place. You may or may not have to remove this plastic hose connector. I did just to give myself a little bit more room. Alright, the next step is to get the weight on. So what this weight does is it allows the hose to retract down back to the bottom. So when you're sitting up on the top doing dishes, you pull your hose out and you're cleaning stuff, it'll automatically fall back down underneath the kitchen sink. To connect the weight, first unscrew the two screws from the weight. Next, we're going to connect the hose to the push-on plastic hose connection fitting, just like that. And I like to give it a little bit of a pull to make sure it is definitely snug in place. The next step is the placement of the weight. Where I like to place the weight is just a couple inches from the very bottom of the hose on the hose pull-out side. In other words, away from our plastic hose connection. The reason I don't like to put it at the very bottom is because it can sometimes bang down on the cabinet below. I like to come up and check it up on top, make sure everything's working right. As you can see, this pull-out faucet has plenty of room to wash dishes. And here's how the weight operates. Okay guys, we're almost done with this faucet installation, but let me show you something here. There are two different rigid connections coming out from the faucet. So this is the shorter one, and here's the longer one. These two connections will represent hot and cold. The shorter of the two is going to be the hot side. So if I put the handle all the way back like this, that would be the hot side. The cold side is forward all the way to the front of the sink like this. So I'm going to grab the shorter of the two outlets, and I'm going to connect that to the hot side, which is my left angle stop here. But as you can see, these flex connectors, like most these days, are 3/8 inch. Now, most older angle stops are actually 1/2 inch size, but that's okay. I've got some brass adapters that are going to reduce the angle stop size from 1/2 inch to 3/8 so we can connect our flex connectors. And this is very simply done like this. I've got a gasket. We'll put that gasket right on top of the angle stop, and we're going to follow it up by the brass reducer, and we're going to screw it into place just like we would a flex connector. Snug those up with a open-ended adjustable wrench. Now we've reduced our angle stop from 1/2 inch to 3/8 and can accept the flex connectors from the faucet side. Once that's secure, we can put our flex connector right on top. And we'll snug with our open-ended adjustable wrench. And then I'll do the same for the cold side. I will show you where to get all these parts in the links below. Next, turn on the angle stops and definitely check for leaks underneath in every connection. Don't forget to check the plastic hose connection also for leaks. Next step, I like to remove the head from the faucet. I like to flush it out, my hot water and my cold water both, to get any debris out of the system. When you shut off your angle stop, oftentimes you'll get calcium deposits or rust, and we don't want that going into our brand new faucet. Once the hot and cold side are both flush, let's test the faucet. As you can see, the faucet has 2 different settings simply by pushing the little button on the head here. Alright everyone, that's how to install a single whole kitchen faucet. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.